So that's pretty much it. So I think I'll stop there, and we'll open up for questions if anybody has any. Thank you very much.
I'm just curious, where did you get the name Jim Brody? How did you know that was the name?
I went through a lot of permutations, tried different names, and it's very funny. And I needed something that sounded strong, but not too hip, not too harsh, not too way out there, like, or not too 70s, like Derek. And so it was a trial and error. And I realized, I soon discovered, looking at other things, that I needed one sound, first name or last name, that had a hard, because he's a hard B or D sound I wanted it to. And so that became Brody. And then Jim has a kind of a softer, it's firm, it's popular, but it's still, but it's a little bit softer. So I like the balance. I was afraid to read that kanji bit in front of you. Master translator, and that was very scary for me to read the kanji. Anybody else?
Can you say a little more about the approach letter to the agent? You said it's really important, but then you can say a lot about what you actually have.
Yeah, approach. This I've met too many. When I was an editor at KI, of course, I looked at a lot of approach letters, and I discounted. I forgave somebody if they had a couple typos in their letter, or it wasn't a very good explanation, or it was very long and pedantic. Mainly because I was that way, and I could afford to be that way because I didn't have dozens coming in over my desk every day. But in New York, or any major publishing, whether it's a publisher or an agent, the cliche is they look at it as a sample of your writing. Well, yes and no. But the problem, when before I got my current agent, I had another agent, and she wasn't a big internet fan. This was at the beginning of the internet, rise of the internet and stuff. So she didn't like to use the internet. These were days when a lot of agents didn't like to use internet and email. She had an answering machine. And so you either wrote her a letter, but she also would accept messages on her answering machine. So I flew into Tokyo, into New York from Tokyo for business, and so she had taken on my other book, the book I wrote before this, and so we got together and have a meeting. But the day I showed up to have this meeting, her answering machine was broken. So she was answering every call, and so she had just a small office. I could hear, every time she says, I have to take these because I might miss a call. So I said, go ahead. And so over the next 90 minutes, well, it was going to be 90 minutes to 2 hours. She must have got 20 phone calls. And over half of them were from new authors asking her to look at her manuscript. I was only there 2 hours. Okay? And this is when I realized that this is the kind of traffic these people see. She wasn't even, a really top-ranked agent, and she was just getting inundated with people. They have to sift through these things. And so that letter is really going to knock their socks off. And so I have this article, and I have something on my website that explains how you do it, and how to do it in a certain way to attract their attention. But you want to talk about your book, but not only about your book. You want to show them the value of it and the property of it, and why they should publish it. And you better find something nice to say about them, too, so that they can see that you've actually done your homework, and there's a reason you're coming to them. And so it's really important, I can't stress this enough, if you spend 2 years working on a book, spend a month working on your letter, going through 10, 12 drafts, whatever it takes. And it should be less than a page and a half when it's done. And it's a very hard thing to do, to cover all the bases. Does that help?
Yeah.
No, just a couple of questions. One is your plot, the structure of your plot. Do you know when you start writing how it's going to end, or is it very organic? Does it depend on things that might pop up? Jim feels on a particular moment.
Yeah.
So sort of the direction. which perhaps you're not anticipating, and then you have to bring it back again. And, I mean, how organic is it?
It's very organic. I usually start with, well, I'm learning with a series character. I just finished the second book about 2 weeks ago, put the final touches on the second book. I'm starting for the third, so I have a little bit of experience as far as that goes. The advantage with a series character is you have a basic sort of moral structure, his moral structure, and a basic character to start with. So I start with that. Usually I know the first 4 or 5 chapters. I have part of the theme, and I start that way. And I like this word organic, which is, I don't know when this came about, but it used to be, he doesn't outline. Now it's, you're doing it organically. This is much nicer. He doesn't outline, organize.
So you don't know how it ends?
No, because I know there are a number of authors that do, but there's quite a number that don't. And I don't like to, because if it's fresh for me, I'm enjoying the writing process and to see where it's going to take me. And I'm really enjoying it. If it's fresh for me, then I'm pretty sure it will be fresh for the reader too. And I found that I've read a number of authors where I can tell they've outlined and it's being plotted, and I said, okay, about this time, such and such, something will happen here, and sure enough it does. And after a while I can kind of second guess it, like a bad sort of TV drama, you know, and so I think it sort of kills the, but some people do need the outline. If they do a good job of it, then fine. Just for me it doesn't work.
And what's your relationship with Jim then? I mean, how do you see him? Is some kind of thing to ego or?
His Japanese is better than mine. We argue about it late into the night. I mean, he's somebody who knows Japan well. He has street smarts, and he's a little bit rough and tumble, but also he's dealing with these art stuff. So he's kind of like the bull in the China house. What is it? Bull in the China store? China shop. Thank you. But he owns the shop. And so he knows the high and the low, and he can deal with both. And that's how I see it. And like a lot of us here, he knows a lot about Japan, and is able to. He's the ultimate insider in Japan, but he can explain it in a way that outsiders can understand. Does that help?
Yes, I was wondering how to deal with this income.
I thought I'd sidestepped that. Well, a lot of the art stuff, I've done a lot of the arts, I've edited a number of art books, I have some ceramics and some Japanese art, so that part is certainly me. I don't do martial arts, although a lot of my friends do, and I've seen any number of things. I've edited a few martial arts books, which you end up, if you've anybody ever translated, co-written, edited a martial arts book? What you end up doing is sort of standing on top of your desk and going through all these moves to make sure it actually works, and the writing and the pictures. I did that enough times, I almost feel like I've studied martial arts. So, elements of myself are in there, yes.
Plus your father.
Plus I'm a father, yeah.
That's a big part.
Yeah.
So Brody is a kind of samurai. He's moved by the flowers, and at the same time he's a terror with a sword.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, he's got a foot in both worlds, and he's sort of like a conduit. So and because of that, I can use him to explain to to overseas non-Japanese a little bit about Japan. Hopefully over a series, a number of books. Each time I can introduce a few different aspects.
I mean, that paradigm is so un-Western. John Wayne was not only
No,
an elegant size.
it's true. That's true. That's what I was saying back in the beginning. Most mystery, thriller, spy things, it's all about conspiracy, the darker side, the underbelly, something rotten in the state of whatever, right? It's almost all that. So I've tried to do both high and low here. And I think, everybody knows like the Jack Reacher series, right? They're pretty good. They're well written by a British guy called Lee Child. But basically his character is like a modern John Wayne. He just stops through everything. He's very clever, he's very smart, he's a lot smarter than John Wayne's characters ever were. But he just sort of rips through everything, and he's an Avenger, he's a white knight, but it's always the dark and dirty that he's uncovering and writing. I try to work both sides of it in. So, I've got the second book has got, there's a flashback to World War II, but from a very different perspective. It's got a little bit of China in it. It's got some more Japanese art. Sengai is introduced, the Zen monk painter. Circle, square, that guy. And a number of other cultural elements. A little bit of kendo, a little bit of swords, things like that. So each time I'm adding different elements.
Does that book have a title?
Yeah, it's just, I gave Simon & Schuster, oh, here's an interesting story. When I first had it in the manuscript, this was the title I had it in, it's Japantown. Simon & Schuster bought it, and then after they started to go through it, they said, you know, we're not so sure Japantown is a good title. Do you have any other titles? Well, I've been writing the book for a number of years, so I had a whole list of, possible titles. But I'd worked through, over the time I've been writing a novel, I kind of kept coming back to this one. Because Japantown, the place in San Francisco, takes on, and the event that happens in this book, takes on a kind of symbolic meaning in the book, in the end. And so I decided in the end this was the best title. So when Simon & Schuster, when my editor asked me, well, do you have any other titles? Because we think this might, Japantown, the name might be too limited, right? And it might just, people might be scared away by the Japan element, right? It's too oriental, it's too exotic, too foreign. So I said, I did have other titles, but I said, no, but I'm open to any suggestions you might have. And I left it like that. Well, time went by, and more time went by. 6 months went by, 8 months, a year. And the book came out 18 months after I signed the contract. And they had to make a decision, and they came around to Japantown. So when the second book, which you asked about, came out, I gave them a completely different title. They didn't like it. And they said, it's got to have a Japanese word in the title. That's your brand. I said, I have a brand? I didn't know. And because of the way, I wish I'd known before I'd written the whole book. But so a lot of it takes place in Tokyo this time, and so so they wanted a common Japanese word. It can't be something obscure, or it has to be something common that everybody can understand. So the only thing that was left for that particular book was basically Tokyo. So it's Tokyo, and I gave them 5 titles. It was like Tokyo Freefall, Tokyo Kill. And that's what they ended up with, Tokyo Kill. Which, as it turns out, it's a little bit more aggressive than I'd like as a title. It's not exactly a classy title, if I may say so. But that's the one all the bigwigs like. But so I went with it. But it turns out that Tokyo, 5 letters, Kill, 4 letters. So apparently I have a brand. I'm branching out into clothes and shoes pretty soon. Yeah.
Barry, did they come up with many different designs for the cover? Did
Oh,
you
good
see
question.
more? Did you see a lot of different designs?
They came up with the first design. I'm really happy with this jacket. I think it works great. It stands out. It's dramatic. It's appropriate to the story. The first one that came out was very elegant. It was blue and gold. It had some gold stripes here with the blue in it and then blue. But it looked like and some lettering that sort of looked like the kind of lettering you'd use on a reissue of a Raymond Chandler novel. If you were reissuing it today. It was very nice and very elegant. And but it was completely wrong for the book. And I think that the designer made the kind of equated the Japantown with Chinatown, the movie, decided to do that kind of thing. It was very nice, but it was completely wrong for the book. And I was kind of stuck in a hard place. I didn't like it, but I didn't know I couldn't just say that to my editor and mail editor, so I was very diplomatic. And I said, well, it needs a little bit of this, maybe if we do this and this and that, and I came up with a very long letter, but it needs to be worked on a little bit. My agent earned his money, he said, I hate it. He could say what I couldn't, so they redid it, and then this is the second one they came up with. They just, she said, instead of tinkering with it, we're just gonna come up with something, then they came up with this.
So there are only two.
There were only two.
Huh.
Now, the next book, they have a similar look. They had a yellow background with blue writing, and the various scene under here, different scene under here, and it didn't look. And then they had a beige one and a gray one, and we ended up with the yellow one, but it wasn't really exactly right. And then somebody said, "We got to make the second book bigger. It should look big." And this is what I was told later. And so they decided they would use silver foil on the title. So they changed, they dropped the yellow. It's a really cool kind of steel blue, really elegant sort of steel blue, and it's going to be silver foil and lettering. And it echoes, the typeface echoes this. And so now I'm very happy to say that Tokyo Kill title, which sounds a little bit over the top or aggressive, now looks pretty elegant in that format. So they saved, yeah.
How long did it take you to write and how many rewrites did you do?
A lot of rewrites. The first book, I was working at KI, at Code Arts International, and I was doing 60, 70 hours a week. I still had the kids hadn't gone off to college, so they were still around, they were younger, and I had an hour commute. That took over a number of years. I did it slowly, step by step. But the second book now, since I was just concentrating on that, took about 10 months over a 14-month period. Took a lot of holidays. So I'm getting faster, and the quality's still there. I'm happy to say. Yeah.
I'm interested in the difference between fiction and non-fiction writing. There seems to be quite a divide. You spent a lot of time with non-fiction editing. Did fiction writing come naturally?
Yeah, I mean, it took a lot of, there was a lot, I wrote another book, another Jim Brody story before this. That was the one my earlier agent tried to sell. And so that's when I developed the voice and the character. That's what takes the time. Not so much the story, but the voice and the character and the rhythm and something that, as I said, kind of equates, something that kind of, and then when I switched to thriller, I mean, it has to be at the level of really, in order to get any attention, it has to be, the storytelling quality has to be high enough to, compete with people like Dan Brown, Robert Ludlum's Ghost, all those people. Robert Ludlum has written more books now than he did when he was alive. But I mean, so those and when I was at KI, when I decided I was going to write fiction, was probably about 12 years ago or so, whatever it was. I consciously stopped editing fiction because I could edit nonfiction, whether it was translation or original English, without any problem. But we only did fiction and translation, and when I edited that, when I was working with fiction manuscripts, I found it affected my writing, and not in a good way. No matter how good the translator was. I worked with some good translators. So I had to make a conscious decision. And now I've found that even when I'm writing now, I can't read any fiction in translation, even by major publishers. Like all these Scandinavian mystery thrillers that are coming out. I can't read those when I'm writing because it throws off my writing somehow.
That's actually the next question I was going to ask was, who do you like as writers? Who do you read and enjoy reading?
Well, I read a lot of general fiction, and actually and now I'm reading more mystery thrillers just to keep up with it. I tend to like the people that I don't know that they don't influence me directly, but I do kind of like them. I do sort of like. I like Robert B. Parker, who was a mystery. He passed away a year or two ago, unfortunately. His early stuff was brilliant, and even his later stuff was very amusing, and he wrote well. His sentences were very good. I liked him. In and I read very widely. However, I found, ironically, I have less time to read now. Because I read a lot on the commute to work. I don't have the commute anymore. I just come down a set of stairs and turn a corner. That's the commute. Various people, and I think you really got to find, I think for every writer, you have to find people who you kind of click with. And I think it varies. And so I find that there's a lot of writers, I'll read 4 or 5 of their books, and there's one that I really like and grab onto. I don't necessarily want their whole, I'll read 5 or 10 of them, and there's one that just, I think, just really has a lot of punch and really works for me. I just think it's just perfect in one way or another. Storytelling, language, characters. And so I think that's what you have to do.
Who do you want to play Jim Brody in the Hollywood blockbuster?
It's very funny, I have friends that as soon as the book came out, before the J.J. Abrams deal came through, they were already casting. And they had, was it Ryan Gosling? Is that somebody?
Yeah.
And my Japanese friend, I wrote down the names, but I don't know them all, but in the States, a younger John Cusack was mentioned. Keanu Reeves was mentioned. People like that. And this Ryan Gosling, and another very handsome guy. I finally looked him up online. I've seen his movies, just didn't know his name. People like that. I'll be very curious to see who they're going to cast. I don't know, but those are that's the direction people are going.
Could you speak just real briefly about the role of an agent?
Okay. An agent, can I speak briefly about the role of an agent? An agent, briefly, not too briefly? Hold on. Some people don't want, an agent right off the bat gets 15%. In the old days it was 10%, now it's 15%. But a good agent will earn his keep, his or her keep. They're going to do a lot of the early salesmanship that you don't want to do, if you're like me. I mean, you have to do some of it, I think, but I don't want to do that. They'll do that. And these days, a good agent will not just represent you in book format, they'll be looking at your whole career. They take you on and they think you have potential for more than one book. Sometimes you write your one book about your subject for life and that's enough and that's it, that's fine. But if you're going to write a series of books or a number of books, they'll be thinking in terms of your whole, the arc of your career. You want somebody like that, first of all. And when you go to their website, if they mention something like that, that's a good sign. Okay? You want, in looking for an agent, you want to find an agent who, they could be a great agent. They could be known, you could have heard their name 5, 10 times. But you want to make sure that they're selling your kind of book. They could represent so-and-so, a bestseller, so-and-so name. But if they're not, if they don't have a track record for selling your kind of book, then the greatest agent in the world may not be able to do you any good. I made this mistake once the hard way. I found a very good agent who was in the same office as Dan Brown's agent, which is not a bad thing. But he was a respected agent, and I had him for a different book. But I found out too late, and he came highly recommended, so I said yes to him. But I found out too late that his big sales were in, and his love, the things he was really passionate about, were science fiction and a little bit of fantasy, and then some nonfiction titles. Well, I have a mystery thriller, and he loved the book. He said it was great. He said all the right things, and he came so highly recommended, I said yes. But what happens is, he's not known for mystery thrillers, even though he'd sold 1 or 2. And so his contacts in the publishing world are different kinds of editors. And so when he does contact the editors who do those kinds of books, mystery thrillers, they don't pay him as much attention as they would somebody else who's got a really strong track record in the field. So that's something else you want to make sure you do. And you can do that, you can track down, I mean, with the internet these days, it's a lot easier to do. You can track down agents you find books that people are doing books of the kind in the same subject matter that you're doing, and you can check their acknowledgments for their acknowledgments to their agents. You can go online and look for stories about them and the agent who sold them. There's a lot of databases now that have publishing deals. Publishers Weekly's got them. Publishers Marketplace's got them. So you can do searches and find people. So you want to find agents that are working in your field, and the other thing is you want to find that they've made a number of sales within the last 2 years in your book. They may have sold, Agatha Christie's grandson 15 years ago and made a name for themselves and may not be doing anything more. The guy who, they may have sold, maybe an original agent who sold John Grisham and handles John Grisham. Well, now his stuff is automatic. What have they done lately? Right? So that's what you need to find. Does that help? Okay. Anybody else?
We have a question. Finance driven is fine, let's get rich, but how about satisfaction in your relationship with your publisher or your agent?
Okay. So the question is, I guess I'll repeat the question, is finance,
Money.
okay, there's the financial side, but how about the satisfaction with your agent and your publisher? Is that it? It's important. You want a good match. When I'm writing for myself, basically. I'm not writing for the marketplace out there. I'm writing for myself, and I figure if I write for myself, then I'm a really tough audience, as some people here know. I don't. And so if I can make something that I really think I like and entertains me, I'll write something one day and look at it the next day and throw it away. But I have to like it, and that's really important to me. I don't know if that answers the question.
How do you have to make compromises with your too many?
I didn't have to make any well, the title, you heard the title story. The thing about, a lot of agents act as editors before, they'll edit a manuscript before they actually send it to a publisher. And these are experienced people, and your editor too. I'll listen to what they say. And if they have an idea that I missed or that's better, I'll work it in. And you don't want to be too rigid. Some of them go if they go a little bit overboard, then you have to sit and talk to them. The good ones have a good sense of, I've got very fortunate. Both my editor and my agent have a good sensibility, so I haven't had to deal with a bad editor yet. I have other author friends, people I just met, who were just complaining about their editors doing horrible things to their manuscript. I haven't had that. You have to, whatever happens, for most time I've had nothing but good experiences, and a lot of people do. But whatever happens, you have to deal with it diplomatically. What were those words you used?
Mild man.
Mild man.
How do you do that?
You take a deep breath and you said, let me think about it and call you back.
Are you now out of the agent business yourself? You're just going to focus on writing,
Yeah,
or you're
yeah.
not going to do it?
There were so many, before Japantown sold and before those books sold, I had so many authors coming to me whose books were orphaned, like his, and then I started doing that. But it takes a lot of time and a lot of work. I still have a few people I'm doing it for, but those are leftovers. I'm slowly getting out of it. I don't have time. I'm finding I don't have time, unfortunately. So, if you want advice or whether I have a thing called Writer's Corner on my website, and that's got about 4 or 5 articles now on writing, some writing tips, and a good article on agents. And so there's something there. And then I'll be here afterwards if you have questions. or something you want to know particular to your case, feel free to come up and ask.
Okay, why don't we have some drinks? I think we're running late, a little late on
Okay.
time. And if you want to sign some books there?
Sure.
So go ahead, and if you want to get a book, please get a book, and there's refreshments over here. Help yourself.
Okay, and thank you very much for a very, very informative.